If Deommodore Lenoir were running the 49ers, Maxx Crosby would be on the team today. What's up, everyone? I'm Grant Cohn. Welcome back. Coach Noah Johnston, longtime contributor on the channel. The show today is powered by BetUS, live sportsbook and casino. And we're going to be talking about the Niners off-season priorities, ranking them, because they have so many things to do and so little time to do them. But before we get into ranking those priorities, I kind of want to start with the news hook-ish thing, which is Maxx Crosby and the Niners. It seems like they've been kind of flirting with each other openly on social media for a while. Deommodore Lenoir has been recruiting him on Twitter and X. And then Maxx Crosby came to the Bay Area for the NBA All-Star game and wrote a long thing on X where he capitalized the first letter of every word, which means he meant it, and talked about how much he loves the Bay Area. I mean, there's clearly mutual interest. It would probably cost a first-round pick plus. Is this where the Niners start this offseason? Go get a hell of an edge rusher?
I feel like Deommodore Lenoir recruits everybody. You know, like especially if there's rumors like this person's on the trade block, like he's out there recruiting them, right? So I think that's just what he does. But
that's true. You gotta respect the hustle, though. The grind doesn't stop.
Well, absolutely. Like how many other players are doing that? But a first round pick, like I don't. And I think this kind of coincides with the topics that we're getting into, but I don't know that they should be. I don't know if they want to give. They should be giving away their first round picks. Like I know Maxx Crosby is good, but they need to get younger and cheaper.
That's true. My thought was if they're going to go edge rusher in round 1 at 11.
Mm-hmm.
They could do that. They could take one of the guys from Georgia or the dude from Tennessee, and those guys might be great, but they probably won't be as good as Maxx Crosby, although one of them might be better. But if you're going to go that direction anyway, it's a thought. You could make him. You could give him an extension. You can make him affordable in the short term. He's a better player than Bosa. Yeah, I said it.
If that was the case, I guess would say I would have to compare it with Garrett, right? Like what's Garrett's cost versus Crosby? Then what can you get Garrett on the books for versus what can you get Crosby on the books for? I don't even know what's their age difference, right? Is Garrett's like 20? Is he 29? I think
Garrett's 29. I believe Crosby's 27. I think Crosby's about 2 or 3 months older than Bosa.
Okay.
Yeah. So he kind of fits their core age. I mean, he'd probably get invited to Cabo, but like you said, he'd be expensive. I just feel like if they're thinking about going D end at 11, this is another alternative. You could just trade this pick for a all-pro D end, but he's older.
Yeah.
And then you trade Brock Purdy for another quarterback on his rookie deal. Simple.
Who's the new Raiders GM? I forgot.
I forget his name, but Brady and Pete Carroll and Chip Kelly and some guy.
I was gonna say maybe could you get the Raiders to give them to you for like a second? I don't know.
No.
I
mean, no. What do you think he's worth? A first and a third, a first and a second, 2 firsts? Not 2 firsts.
Not 2 firsts.
First and a third?
Yeah, especially. Yeah.
Could you send him a third this year and then give him a 1 next year?
It would help if he requests a trade. That would help. That will help lower his price a little bit.
It's true. What about this? Is the fact that there potentially a bunch of premier edge rushers available this offseason potentially suppress the value of each one? Like someone's going to go get Myles Garrett. He'll be the top one. And then that team won't be in the market for an edge rusher anymore. It'll be one less team. And I don't know.
I think that could hurt. It could affect it a little bit, right? Like, but I feel like everyone's always kind of in the always looking for like a premier edge rusher. So it probably would affect it a little bit in the sense that, right, like where if you really wanted an edge rusher, you probably would want to go Garrett first, and you'd be interested in seeing how that plays out before you kind of make a move on Maxx Crosby, and maybe you would only want to make that move with Crosby as if they give you a really good deal on it. Like, I'll pull the trigger now, otherwise I'm going to wait and see if I can get Garrett, right? Like, if you're if you're trying to trade for Garrett, and especially if the asking price is close, I'd rather trade for Garrett. But then if the Raiders lowered their price a little bit more, then maybe you just pull the trigger on that one.
Roll with me on this one too, and then we could change the topic, because I'm not sure they're going to get Crosby or anyone like this. But it seems like with a player, a defensive end who's this good and this famous and this rich, they can potentially pick their spot a little bit. Like, if some team called the Raiders and said, we want to trade for Maxx Crosby, it's the Titans, and Crosby says, I don't want to play for the Titans, and I wouldn't sign an extension there. I don't know that the Titans would necessarily trade a hell of a lot of picks to bring in a guy who doesn't want to stay long term. So when he says, I like the Bay Area, it could be him kind of like picking his spot. I'm not saying Myles Garrett wouldn't want to come to the Bay Area, but you don't know how people feel about Santa Clara. I don't know.
I mean, taxes.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Taxes, politics, yada yada yada. Some people are into it, some people aren't.
I mean, and Crosby has already experienced Bay Area taxes, right? So
yeah, and that's a good thing. So he's in. He seems to like everything about it. And Deommodore Lenoir wants him. So I mean, if Deommodore Lenoir wants him, how are you going to upset Deommodore? How are you going to walk in to that facility and say, Deommodore, I'm sorry, we just couldn't do it? Did you even try? Is there a player the Niners could trade for Crosby straight up?
But the thing is, you don't really see player for player deals in the
because
NFL.
of the way the cap is constructed, right?
Yeah, it's
They should. It would make the NFL better.
But usually it's in the NFL, right? It's one team going one direction, the other's going another. So a team is not looking to add players; they're looking to add draft picks. They're not looking.
That's true, and that's the Raiders.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, ideally, they would turn Maxx Crosby into 4 draft picks that are pretty high over the next 2 drafts. But I don't know if they can do that.
I know that they're not. I know that they're not in the Bay Area anymore. But I just feel, I just would be shocked if the Raiders did a deal with the Niners. I just don't think they would do it. Like, I know
why that was the case in the past. I think that's a Mark Davis thing. Maybe that still applies, but I wonder if like Tom Brady would be like, Mark, grow up.
Yeah, I don't know.
Maybe. Okay, let's get into it. What do you think the Niners' offseason priorities should be in terms of position? Like, they have this 11th pick. Is it D-end? Is it D-tackle? Is it offensive line in general? Like, how would you rank the priorities in a perfect world?
So am I going first? I'm gonna go.
Yeah, let's go. Let's discuss it. Let's see if we can come to a consensus.
Well, all right. Well, the first, I think it's got to be offensive line, offensive tackle. Like, to me, I think they have to address the offensive line, because there's the thing about football, and I think you do streams with people that have coached and people have played, and you have connections. And I would ask your, the people have played, people have coached, like, how many times have you won, or how many times have you won a game where you said, you know what, our offensive line and our defensive line sucked, but our skill positions, they just won the day for us.
Yeah. Yeah, we won in spite of getting trounced in the trenches.
Right.
And how often does that happen?
Yeah, I'm going to venture to say, if you polled all those people, they're going to say never, or very, very, very infrequently. And
maybe because of a bunch of turnovers or something.
Right.
Yeah.
So I think it all starts there. It's got to start there, right? Like, and I'm a big fan of the Joe Burrow meme, like when with the the Chase draft. And you can't throw to somebody if Joe Burrow's on the ground,
right? Even if he's wide open,
right?
Yeah.
Like, running backs can't create holes that aren't there, so you got to start there. And I see, Trent Williams, he's awesome. And I think when he plays, I think it's safe to say he's going to be baseline a top 5 tackle in the game, right? When he plays, and you don't know how long he's going to play for, right? But he might tell you, I'm going to play for another 3 years, but his body might say differently. And you
or he might say, I'm done. I had a personal tragedy. I'm 37. I didn't see this coming. I'm sorry. I mean, we haven't really heard a word from him in a while. Don't know.
Or he just changed his mind, or he's like, nothing to do with personal tragedy. He's just like, hey, I'm just done with football. I'm just, but you have to account for that as a team. Like, so how long are you going to let this go until something happens, or are you going to start addressing it ahead of time? And I've seen you talk about this before, but like, how many times are you going to be in a position to draft this early? Because these offensive tackles, and I know this isn't a great year for offensive tackles, but how many times are you going to be in a position to draft an offensive tackle with elite talent? Like, I don't know.
I mean, like, if everything goes according to plan with the Niners, they get healthy, they bounce back, easy schedule, they're in the playoffs, they're picking in the 20s or the late 20s.
Yeah, I think if they got to scout these guys hard, and if there's a guy they like, and I think they got to go get him or just draft him at 11, be it Banks or Campbell or whoever. If I think that if they think Campbell's the guy and they think he's going to go earlier, I think they should sniff around and see if they can move up to go get him, because I think it's that important. Like, I wouldn't give away a whole draft for it, but I think you got to look into it,
especially considering the Niners really haven't drafted an offensive tackle since Jalen Milroe 4 years ago, and he's a free agent. So at minimum, they have to replace him. And Trent Williams missed 7 games last season. You have to be prepared to play a half a season or more without him. And Colton McKivitz is still Colton McKivitz, for the record.
Yeah. 49ers fans have been spoiled, right? Because the 49ers lucked into that Trent Williams situation. Like, Joe Staley retired, and the 49ers were caught with their pants down. And then it's not often where you have an organization as disorganized as Washington, where they just ignored a brain tumor and the player's upset, and he's like, oh, I need to get out of here. Right? Like, if you guys all can go look at offensive tackles, don't hit the market.
No.
Good ones don't. No. And they're generally not on trade blocks. I mean,
especially ones that are going to be first ballot Hall of Famers.
Yeah, and usually these guys actually don't really request trades. Like, look at what's his name, the guy with Joe Thomas. He just like sat there and on a crappy Browns team for his entire career. The guy was awesome, right? Never asked to leave, or the guy's
Hall of Famer.
Hall of Famer. He's Hall of Famer.
Yeah.
I don't know how many meaningful games he played in his entire career. He should have, but like, these guys just don't leave, And
here's my thing, though, or the Niners thing. They drafted McGlinchey with the 9th pick, and I think that was a traumatic experience for them because he wasn't worth it. I mean, they didn't give him a second contract, and he was just okay.
And
they passed on some players who were really good. And since then, you've heard Chris Forster and Kyle Shanahan say stuff like, we just need a starter. You can find these guys later in the draft. We like Colton McKivitz and Jake Brendel. Like, I almost feel that they've changed their philosophy, and they're not gonna really invest unless it's Trent Williams. They're not really gonna invest in offensive linemen that high anymore. Like, they just found Dominic Pooney in round 3. I wouldn't be surprised if they waited until round 3 again.
He's
this
a guard,
year.
Though. Like, if you look at offensive tackles, you've always been able to find good guards like late. Like, it's offensive tackles where those guys, if you look around the league, good offensive tackles are generally first-round picks, and they're generally top 15
top
guys.
10,
yeah.
15, yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, left tackles can be top 5. If you're at 11, now you're thinking maybe right tackle.
Yeah.
Yeah. Which is fine if they could get a right tackle. Anthony Davis was the 11th pick once upon a time.
Yeah, and the thing is, like, I hear, you've said this before. People on your stream have said it before. Is like, the thing is, offensive line takes so long to develop. Well, like, if you're gonna keep kicking this bucket down the road, like, you're gonna be continue to have this problem, and just only gonna continue to steamroll. So you gotta address it now, like, and they're just, when Trent steps away, they're not gonna unless they unless they strike gold again, and some guy just randomly wants to be traded to the 49ers, like they're going to be caught with their pants down, and they're not going to have, they'll be playing with, I don't know who's going to play left tackle. Maybe you.
You know what their record is without Trent Williams since they traded for him?
Probably bad.
4-12.
4-12. Because he's like he's the centerpiece for their offensive line, right? Like, yeah.
He's what's special on the offensive line. Everyone else is like there. Although Pooney might become pretty good.
Yeah, I think Pooney, obviously, he seems like he's it. See, I don't necessarily think I think Colt McKivitz is all right, but like you should still be looking to even if Trent Williams was 30 or 29, I still think you should be looking to upgrade Colt.
I think Colt McKivitz is a great replacement for Jalen Milroe as a swing tackle. Phenomenal. I think they should go get a new starting right tackle and move Colt McKivitz to the bench. I think he would play the bench so well. I couldn't imagine anyone who would be better suited for the bench than Colton McKivitz. I like that setup. And then they can find a left guard in round 3.
If they did like what Seattle did a couple of years ago and they drafted an offensive tackle in the first round and an offensive tackle in the second round, I wouldn't be mad at that. Like,
when they went Cross and Lucas?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. You got to. I mean, and just because you take an offensive tackle at 11 doesn't mean you're going to hit, but you got to. Again, what's the alternative? Waiting till next year when you pick 27th?
Right.
Because that's what happened last year. It was a really good class of offensive tackles. Like 5 or 6 of them went in the top 20.
And then they all go.
Yeah, and we asked John Lynch, like, why didn't you take one? He was like, well, we'd love to, but look where we were picking. So, okay, now you're at 11.
Yeah.
If you got to move up for Campbell, fine. I like Kelvin Banks. A lot of people are just like, absolutely anyone but Kelvin Banks. I don't know. I mean, we'll see what his arm length is at the combine, but he looks kind of like built like Rashawn Slater, who's hella good.
I also think with Banks, I think he fits their profile. I think there's something to Kyle wanting a specific, if he's going to draft an offensive lineman high, he wants a specific, like he wants him to be able to execute his scheme, right? Mm-hmm. And I think Kevin Banks has specifically the agility and the balance for his size to be able to execute the blocks on a high level that Kyle wants. So I think that
he can do it right tackle, he can do it a guard, he can do it wherever, but he's going to be an incredible run blocker in this scheme in the NFL, I think.
Yeah, and I don't think even with the short arms, like I still think he can be a plus pass blocker. He's going to have issues with certain edge rushers, but like Trent Williams gets beat sometimes, and so do other tackles in the league. It's just he's going to be like a plus. He'll be a plus pass blocker, but he'll be an elite run blocker.
Yeah, and is it like
he won't have those McGlinchey moments where he's just going to get steamrolled.
Do you really need a 6'7", 6'8" offensive tackle who's high cut and lean and going to get thrown around and can't anchor? That's what the Niners always look for in a right tackle. I don't understand why they want that skill set. How about someone who's like can't anchor and is really athletic and a little shorter?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
We want the guy who gets thrown around because he's 6'9" and his center of gravity is above the edge rusher's nose. Like, why?
Yeah.
I don't get it. I'm with it. I mean, I would go offensive tackle too. They're going to go D-line though. No, they're going to go tight end.
Yeah. See, if you had the offensive line settled, if you had this issue resolved, I think that taking tight end is an excellent, because I always kind of advocated going after another high end tight end versus a receiver, because I think it helps you more in the matchup, in the match with the matchups. And I think tight ends are way harder to find. Good tight ends are way harder to find and they're cheaper.
So that's a guy you want to give a second contract to, whereas you can get a wide receiver, he could be great, and you're like, do we really want to give him $40 million a year? Do we really want to do that?
Yeah, I would rather pay, the way the Niners now is, right? You have Deebo on a big contract and you have Ayuk on a big contract. I would, in theory, I would prefer to, for instance, have Kelsey and Kittle together on big contracts, or just get whoever at wide receiver.
Yeah, theoretically, you could have Kelsey and Kittle together on your team for about the price of one Brandon Ayuk, for less than the price of one Jamar Chase.
Right.
Yeah. And really, theoretically, you could have Kittle and Warren on your team for, less than $20 million a year, something like that. I don't know. That'd be kind of interesting.
I like the idea. I like the idea, but I feel like you got to address the first.
What about
part.
Simmons, that offensive tackle from Ohio State who tore his patellar tendon? Would you try that?
I don't like the touring. I don't like the injury thing, especially with the Niners. They've had bad luck with that stuff.
Yeah. So we don't necessarily have the answer on which offensive tackle to get, but the Niners. You know what I would do if I were Kyle Shanahan this year?
Yeah.
Go to the combine.
Do you think they'll draft they'll draft a defensive tackle and then Banks or whoever will be there, Camp will be there, they'll be like a Hall of Famer and then be like, well, we didn't even scout him.
I mean, this is essentially what happened with Javon Kinlaw, Tristan Wirfs. Could have had Tristan Wirfs, who looks like a generational offensive tackle, and the Niners are like, no, sorry, not for us. We want this defensive tackle. He's going to be more of an impact player. Okay.
But I remember those times, and I remember being against Tristan because I didn't think it was a need at the time. And I know you were very very against Mike McGlinchey, and you wanted to replace him. But I think they're in a different place.
That's one of my takes that held up, baby. Let's go.
Yeah, they're in a different place right now. I think they need to address because they have issues. Their right tackle is is good. He's okay, right? Or okay, but their left tackle.
Thanks. Let's be accurate there. Okay.
Their left tackle is old. It's getting up there. So
and Jalen Moore is leaving. Who he did a solid job last year in relief, but they lost those games and now he's gone or soon to be.
Yeah. So,
okay, I got another guy for you. Unless you got more for offseason priorities. Do you want to do secondary priorities or
no? What's your next priority? What do you got? I mean, you said they're going to go.
To me, it's
after
it's the run defense in general. I think it's almost more important than the pass rush because, I mean, if you can't stop the run, I don't think you have a chance against the Eagles or the Commanders or the Lions. And the Niners can't really stop the run. I mean, from D tackle to linebacker to safety, even setting the edge, I think it's such an issue. So if they could, anyone in the middle of their defense.
Yeah, they need more. And I know a lot of people they need more size there. Like,
they need bigger D tackles for the wide nine.
If this was something they tried to address with Javon Kinlaw, it just didn't. It just didn't work out. But they need bigger defensive tackles.
6'5", 325.
Yeah. Ideally, I think to me what they need is in a perfect world they would have one of their defensive tackles should be one of the top defensive tackles in the game, and can play the run, can play the pass. And then the other one, I think you can get away with subbing based on down distance and all of that. Like, when it's first down, you can put in a run stopper or whatever. When it gets in the pass down, you put in a pass rusher.
Bring in Yetur Gross-Matos.
Yeah.
Yeah. Hey, do you think Drake Jackson is going to factor into this team this year?
No.
No.
Next question.
Damn, dude. Next question. Do you agree with me at the run defense? I don't know.
Drake Jackson has the same chance as Drake having an effect on this team.
Just drafting a player named Drake was a mistake right there.
Yeah. Did you see the footage of like some guy who flew a drone up to his penthouse in Australia and he was like throwing?
The throw was great. So good. Okay. So last year, Juwan Jennings. Excuse me. Last year, Juwan Jennings started to assert himself in the playoffs. Quiet regular season, good playoffs, great Super Bowl. Restricted free agent. Niners give him the second round tender. He doesn't sign it. He gets an extension for 2 years and rewards him by playing the best season of his career. Jordan Mason had a really good stretch before he got hurt and buried. Restricted free agent. They could tender him or they could give him a 2-year extension. Do you think that would be a wise move?
To give him a 2-year extension?
Yeah, the Juwan Jennings move.
What's it going to cost?
That's the thing. You'd think, well, why do that? Because running backs are a dime a dozen. You can find them. Sure, but they're also cheap, even on the open market. I figured you could probably get him 2 years, 8 million, 7.
The thing is, Mason already knows the system. He's comfortable there. I think they're comfortable with him, so I think there's value to that as well. And he's a different style of running back to Christian McCaffrey, so it complements. They if they're going to sign him though, they gotta address how they utilize their running backs and stop, because the way they do it is like they just give McCaffrey all the carries until he's hurt, and then they'll just give Mason all the carries until he's hurt. Then they'll just go to the next one.
Yeah,
like you gotta sub these guys. Like
it's so weird. I mean, Kyle's been coaching a long time. Bobby Turner's been coaching a long time. Why do they do it this way?
But then they did it. They subbed these guys. Remember with it was early on with Coleman and Mostert, right? They would sub them and Breida. They would sub them in and out. I felt like they did a good job there. But now, like ever since then, they're just like, whoever's the back, that's the guy. He just stays in there until he's hurt.
Well, then the run game coordinator was Mike McDaniel, who does sort of rotate backs a little bit more in Miami than the Niners have since he left. So maybe that's part of it.
Have you or anyone ever asked Kyle or Chris Forrester? Well, maybe you should ask Chris Forrester, because he tends to give you better answers, right? Like,
they have asked him, and he's weird. He's like, I always like having a change of pace back and a 1-2 punch. And they always keep going back to like, well, Christian, he just hates coming off the field. And that's what they always say. It's like, okay, so
yeah.
So follow-up question. So.
Yeah. There's not many players. I feel like all players want to continue to play, right?
Yeah. You don't think Jordan Mason doesn't want to come off the field? He's like, thanks, coach. I hate this game.
Yeah. Get me out. Yeah, no, I don't.
I would extend him, man. I feel like he's a good running back. He doesn't have he's young. He doesn't have any like major injuries in his career. There's not many running backs who run harder than him. I'm not saying he's a top 20 running back in the league, but as a number 2 guy, yeah, you might find a better guy than him in the draft, but he's good and probably not that expensive.
Yeah, and you got to account for the guy that they pick in the 2nd or 3rd round not being that good. So
right. And if McCaffrey goes down again, which is probably likely, then you have Mason and Garendo, which was could have been a pretty good 1-2 punch last year if Kyle had used them in that way.
I'm not a big fan of Garendo.
Why not?
I don't think he has a good feel for the running.
I agree.
It's like he's gonna go for like 30, or he's gonna get like a yard.
I agree.
But
I think he's kind of interesting as a receiver out of the backfield.
Yeah, you could use
and not just on like wheel routes, but potentially screens as well.
Yeah, you could use that. You can use it. So, but as a third,
as a pure like ball carrier.
The problem is the way they go through running backs, they get hurt so much. Is you at some point you're going to expect that their third running back is going to be their starter at some point in the season.
And the thing about Garendo is he's not really built to be a starter. He wasn't a starter in college. He gets hurt a lot. He's really more of like a change of pace back, and the Niners, of course, don't use more than one back at a time. So it's good to have him.
Who was the guy that they signed late in the season? And then they was like, oh, wow, like he's actually doing a decent job.
Patrick Taylor?
Yeah, I'm like, oh.
Yeah, they finally let him play in like the very end of the season over Deebo. And he was like, oh, he's better than Deebo. Maybe they shouldn't have been. And remember they claimed Israel Abanikanda off waivers and never played him. Why do they do that? Hey man, we claimed you off waivers. Oh, you like me? How you got a plan for me? No, we hate you, and we just wanted to make sure that you never played football again because we have an agenda against you. You didn't know us.
Hate your guts. Maybe it's the opposite. Maybe they really like him, but they don't think he's a good football player, so they just want to give him a paycheck.
The Trent Taylor experience.
Yeah,
I can't believe Trent Taylor's still on the team. He was in Cabo with them right now. Do you think he had to pay his own way?
He's sorry. In Cabo?
He is. Okay. Number 1 pick. Titans have it. Starting to be some rumors that they might listen to offers for the number 1 pick. The Niners have had some success in the past trading up from about the 11th pick into the... Do you think the Niners should trade up or at least call Tennessee and say, what do you think of Brock Purdy? What do you think of our 11th pick? Could we have that number one? We want Cam Ward.
I wouldn't, because you already know what Brock is, right? So you could do that, and there's more upside with Cam Ward, but
the mystery box of quarterback.
He could end up being a total bust, and then I wouldn't.
Yeah, but it's not like the Niners have ever traded up that far for a quarterback who didn't work out. So I don't see why you would be worried about that. Yeah. Look, I think he looks good. I mean, my expert opinion, I think he looks really good. I'm not sure why people aren't higher on him. It looks like he can do all the off schedule stuff and the quick game stuff. And
what I didn't like about, and maybe it's just me being like, old coach, grumpy guy, but I didn't like that he just played his bowl game just to like get his record, and then was like, I'm done. Yeah. I didn't really like that, but I'm sure he might still be a great player and all of that. But it's just rubbed me the wrong way.
Fair enough. Like, one thing about Brock Purdy, we know his limitations physically, but he is like a hell of a leader, and he's coachable, and he's not an egomaniac, at least outwardly, and he's not going to embarrass the organization in any way, probably. And I'm not saying Cam will, but we just don't know. I don't know Cam like that. Couldn't say.
I'm not, but I think you're on to something. Like I'm not against them drafting a quarterback, because I think they do need a backup. They're going to need a backup, and I don't think it's terrible to like draft it. To look at if there's a guy you like and you're in a good position to draft him, get your backup, and then if that player turns out to be better than Brock, then you elevate that player and you play him.
Okay, I have a potential name. We'll get to him in a minute. I just want to stick with this for a second. The reason I like this idea is, one, I like Cam Ward, and two, I don't like the idea of paying Brock Purdy a big extension, especially coming off this year, especially looking at the whole Jimmy Garoppolo experience. They're different quarterbacks, but they're also kind of similar in certain ways too. So I'm not excited about it. And I do like the idea of getting another quarterback on a rookie deal and kind of resetting that timer and not having to make all these difficult decisions with the players. And just like hope that you can get better because you got healthy at 20 with the oldest roster in the league. I don't like that.
I don't love paying Brock either, but I don't like the alternative because I think the alternative gets a little fuzzy. And then if you don't have the quarterback settled, like you're not gonna have a stable organization. I feel like if they're gonna not sign Brock, then they have to have a different outlook or a different going.
But does like looking at what Jaden Daniels just did last year kind of give you feel like, I mean, Trey Lance and Cam Ward have nothing in common. I feel like take the Trey Lance trauma aside. That was a guy who threw 400 passes in college at 1 AA or whatever. This is a guy who is a consensus number one quarterback, and he has a bunch of reps under his belt, and he's okay. I'm done.
But I mean, look at the draft that they drafted Trey Lance in, right? There's like five of those quarterbacks, and they pretty much all turned out to be. I mean, I guess you could argue Trevor Lawrence he's okay, and he's playing in Jacksonville, so maybe it's a little bit of the. Still though,
since then, that was like 5 years ago. Since then, quarterbacks stay in school longer because of the transfer portal and the NIL thing. So I feel like sometimes these quarterback prospects are a little bit more NFL ready than they were 4 years ago. Like those guys, Mac Jones had like 600 throws. Freaking Zach Wilson had like 900. Trey had 7.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's wild. I feel like college football has changed so much in the last 4 years. And I don't know if it's necessarily making college football better, but I do think it's helping them develop quarterbacks for the NFL better.
Right. There's also the COVID issue, right? And then that hurt. I know that hurt Lance a little bit because he lost a year. So yeah.
Last thing I want to talk to you about this, and then we'll move on because it's not going to happen. But if the Niners were to call up Tennessee and offer him Brock in the 11th pick for the number 1 pick, would Tennessee even want Brock? Nothing against Brock, but like they suck and probably aren't going to be good for a while. Do they need to trade for him and give him an extension right now? Like, does that move the needle for them?
If I was Tennessee, I wouldn't do it. I would take a chance on getting a top tier talent, right? Like, because that's the thing. They're in a different place, right? Like, that's the thing. Like, the Niners are in contention mode, and the Tennessee is in like a rebuild mode. So,
all right. You mentioned drafting a quarterback. I'm into it too. There's a lot of backups this year. One guy who's I'm interested in because I have awful taste in quarterbacks.
I see where you're
is Jalen Milroe. I'm curious to see what you think of him. Here's my case for him. Most of the Alabama quarterbacks are pretty good in the NFL. He's an incredible athlete. He's built like Jalen Hurts, 6'1", 220, and he's probably going to run a 4.4. Hurts ran like a 4.6. He ran for 20 touchdowns last year. He's going to be like, his rushing ability from the quarterback spot should be pretty elite. And he's got a cannon. And I feel like there's potential for him to develop into a functional passer. And if he does, you got a starter with a high upside.
Could they utilize him?
No. It's bad because as soon as you put him under center, like you take away all the things that make him dangerous. And the Niners are such an under center offense. What's the point?
Yeah.
You want him in the shotgun. Run it.
I was going to say, could they utilize him in a package similar to Trey Lance? Kyle started.
Could he be their Taysom Hill?
Yeah. But then the vets wouldn't remember when they started to use. Yeah, they're like.
I'm just saying, like Trey Lance. One of the reasons he didn't work out is he was kind of slow for a dual threat quarterback. He was not elusive. He took big hits. Jalen Milroe is freaking explosive. He might be the fastest player on the team after Garendo, if he were on the team. And I'm saying he wouldn't be the quarterback right away. You'd be developing him slowly into a guy who's like, is Jalen Hurts a great passer? No.
I just generally think they should adopt the philosophy of pretty much always drafting a quarterback, and that's going to be your backup. Or if the backup beats out your starter, then that becomes your starter. And then if that's your philosophy, then if you have a starter, they can't say, "Oh, well, I'm the guy. What are you doing drafting?" Well, like, it has nothing against you, man. We don't hate you. That's what we do. We just draft quarterbacks. Like, that's
Let me ask you this question: if you were a head coach of a football team in the NFL or an offensive coordinator, would you want your offense to primarily operate from under center or the shotgun, and why?
I think that the trend is gun now, right? Because that's where the game is.
That's where it's going.
Yeah,
it's what college does. It's what the players are familiar with. Kyle has this throwback offense, and I feel like under center. What are the benefits of being under center? Better play action game.
Yeah, there's like the natural timing, right? Because of your steps and all of that.
You definitely get a more reaction from the linebackers on the play action when you under center and you turn your back and you extend the ball than when you do the other way. So sure, you can get some explosive plays in the passing game for sure. Right. And you can probably do more schematically in terms of blocking combinations with a fullback back there, a two-back formation under center. And you can run left and right.
Yeah.
So those are good things. But from the shotgun, the quarterback is a huge freaking rushing threat if he's mobile in a way that he's not from under center. And I think, like, if you want to run the ball, the best teams are like these two-back offenses where the quarterback's one of the backs. And he's explosive and he can break tackles or make guys miss. I don't know. That's the direction the Eagles have been going for a long time. And I think that's probably where the league's going. And I wouldn't want to be a throwback offense trying to look like 1997.
I think what Brock is fine. I mean, because I think obviously two different players, right? And I've seen somebody, I can't remember who compared him, but I think the comparison was appropriate. Like, Brock runs similar to Mahomes in the sense that when he needs it, Brock is looking to throw, but when he needs it and he has to take what the defense is giving him, he can do it. And but the problem is Brock doesn't have that downfield arm to threat. When he rolls out, he can't threaten you deep. That's kind of
Here's my thing with mobile quarterbacks, why I love them. Because it seems, look at what Fangio wants to do as a defensive coordinator. And you're a defensive coach. Every defensive coach wants to make an offense one-dimensional, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. You got to take away the run game, make them one-dimensional, and if we can do that, we're going to feel like we win. You can't do that to the Eagles. Because on 3rd and 7, is that a passing situation for them? Are you sure they're going to pass the ball on 3rd and 7, or is it going to be a quarterback draw?
Well, I think the Eagles are uniquely situated, whereas like their quarterback Hurts is not a normal. Look, what does he squat like?
I know
9
he like literally pushes the pile as a runner.
Right,
he's more powerful than Barkley's. Crazy.
So people can't, you can't just be like, oh, we've got a running quarterback, we're going to do tush push. No,
true. You can't do that with Kyler Murray.
It's right. That is unique to the Eagles because 1, Hurts, 2, their offensive line, right? Isn't there? It was the biggest offensive line ever in the Super Bowl, and it's it's the best offensive line. So those two elements together will allow them to do that thing. And I don't think, like, if you put Brock or if you took any other quarterback on the Eagle and put them on the Eagles, I don't know that the tush push would be as effective. Like, even if you took, like, let's just say Josh Allen, I don't know that even Josh Allen would be as effective with a tush push as Hurts,
And that play is so, dangerous because they're always in a position where 3rd and 7, you can't really feel great about sending an exotic blitz because they could catch you in like some quarterback counter trap play. And then all he has to do is get 6 yards on 3rd and 7 and it's 4th and 1 and it's like a guaranteed conversion.
Well,
so
here's the way I think you have to think about it is the Niners, Chiefs, whoever, any other team that's not the Eagles have to get 10 yards to get a first down. They only need 9 because
and they have 4 chances to do it. Yeah. Well, 3 to get 9. Yeah, 3 to get 9.
Yeah.
And look, the Niners have, I don't know, it just seems to me that if the Eagles just won a Super Bowl throwing for 181 yards a game and running the ball 620 times in the regular season, maybe just passing is a little overrated. It's important. But again, if you become a one-dimensional team, and I feel like you always do become a one-dimensional team. Like, great defenses are going to shut down your run game. They're going to shut down your running back in the Super Bowl. It happened to Barkley. It happened to McCaffrey as a ball carrier. The last running back who like dominated a Super Bowl was like 30 years ago. So, if you want to like have a balanced offense in the Super Bowl, I think you kind of need a mobile quarterback. I don't know. That's what I would do. I think this dude has the highest ceiling of any quarterback in the draft. He might be a total bust, but I think he'd be worth it in day 2.
Yeah, I think it's. I wouldn't hate it if they did it. Like, I would understand it.
Just don't trade up to number 3 for him. All right. Speaking of that, of all the moves the Niners have made under Kyle Shanahan and John Lynch, the bad ones, what is the one transaction you think they wish they could reverse?
What do I think they wish, or what do I think I?
Go you first.
The transaction that I think that they should reverse is probably trading away Buckner, even though I was a fan of it. Actually, you know what? Let me. No, I'm not going to say that because
I was going to maybe say Buckner because to me it seems like they're still trying to replace him.
Yeah, it is because you know what? Because I understand why they did it. I just didn't understand what they did. Like, I didn't like what they did with what they got. Like, how they went about. I understand why. I kind of
understood why they did it, but it's like, wait a second. So you trade him for the 13th pick when he was a 7th pick, and he got better. So it seemed like you didn't even get great value. Then you take a player who's clearly not as good as him. Then you move off that player and give Javon Hargrave the contract you should have gave Buckner in the first place. And then he wasn't that good. And now you're still trying to replace Hargrave. Like,
yeah. Because you went there, I'll go signing Deebo because I think because I saw that coming. I was on your show and I saw that coming a mile away. They had the perfect setup, Grant. They made him an all-pro wide receiver.
Mm.
His value couldn't have been higher.
No.
They
literally could have traded him for the 10th pick in the draft.
I don't know.
He was a second-round pick who had one good year.
He would have didn't the Jets or somebody offered him, like, didn't they want to give a late round? I thought it was a late first round pick, or was it? Or I know they got a second for him. They definitely got a second for him. They were offered a second pick for him.
Yeah,
which is not what they're going to get offered now, if that, right? So, and the reason why I was opposed to it at the time is for a couple things. I think you can always get wide receivers. It's the most talent-laden position in football. All of you from high school on, if you've got a guy that's really good, that's your athlete, he's normally going to play wide receiver. And then that filters up to college and so forth. And so it's a talent-laden position. The rules that have been changed of late have all favored the wide receiver. So
yeah, from at the line of scrimmage to the middle of the field,
their job is easier.
Yeah.
So I just think you can find them. And not only that
and they're so expensive.
They're expensive, and the Niners seem to be able to when they draft wide receiver, they seem to, like Ricky Pearsall. I know people, didn't question the pick. I did, but he seemed like he's going to be all right. Like,
yeah, so does.
Kyle seems like he can pick. I know he's got his busts, right? But in general, it seems like he knows what he's doing when he's picking wide receivers, right? So it's something that they've shown they're able to do and replace that position. So why keep putting money into it when you can go find guys that are cheaper? And none of that is, there's always guys that want to get that are on the trading block. Like, so you can always find a guy that you could trade for. So it just doesn't.
What's interesting is the Eagles spend big money on 2 wide receivers and hardly ever throw to them, and they still won.
But you know what, Grant? I'm be interested to see as their roster transitions, and they're going to have to pay other positions. What Roseman does, is he going to give those receivers another contract, or is he going to pay other people and then draft?
Hey, we're throwing for 180 yards a game. This is our new philosophy, our new strategy. Let's pay Jalen Carter and our D line.
Right, and let's just draft a young wide receiver. Right, so
I can see that
with the whole Deebo thing, and I knew that they were going to have to pay Ayuk. So with me at the time, I was like, well, I'd rather pay Ayuk down the road, have that, and then just draft and acquire a cheaper wide receiver and get what you can for Deebo, and they didn't do that.
No, and then I gotta say, probably the worst move of all time, franchise history, the Trey Lance deal. I mean, 3 firsts and a third for a guy you got 4 starts out of. I mean, that's almost impressive.
Yeah,
and how bad it was. And what's crazy is just trading up. Even if they had taken Chase or Sewell, you can't trade 3 firsts and a third for those guys. It was just a doomed move from the start.
Although if you went back and they took Penei Sewell, I think you could look at it and be like, hey, that was a good move. Because they're terrible at picking in the first round. So if they were able to pick Sewell, got in, an all-pro player for 3 first-round picks, like those 3 first-round picks would have probably been,
But there's a reason they didn't pick Sewell, because no one in the league would trade that much for a non-quarterback.
Yeah.
Even though in retrospect, you could justify getting a Hall of Fame left tackle, right tackle.
Right.
Yeah. But damn, I mean, I think when we're talking about how, hey, you've really been kicking the can down the road in the trenches and you're really lacking depth, this trade right here. I mean, there could have been an offensive tackle, a defensive tackle starting that essentially is Trey Lance instead.
You would have
Malik Mustafa is what the Niners ended up getting for Trey Lance. 3 firsts and a third for Malik Mustafa.
Ideally, you would have thought that they should be able to get hit on at least one of those 3 first round picks. But their first round.
They could have missed on all 3 of them.
I think the league average is around 60%.
And the Niners average is around 30%.
Yeah.
They got Bosa and Ayuk and missed on every other.
Probably. Well, I think I would give them It looks like Pierce. It's too early to tell, but I think they might have hit on
True.
Pierce.
True. Yeah, I'll give. Yeah.
It also depends on how you're evaluating. Like, there's different. I've looked through different ways on how you evaluate. Like, are you evaluating it as the player? The player is still a starter somewhere, or are you evaluating, is he a starter on your team and has a second, or are you evaluating it through all pros or Pro Bowls? Depends how you want to evaluate. But like, because theoretically you could give them McGlinchey because he is a starter. He's still playing in the league. He didn't get benched on the Saints. So in theory, you probably,
Broncos.
Yeah. Or sorry. Yes.
You don't even know what team he's on. I'm not giving him McGlinchey.
I thought Saints because I know he plays for Peyton.
That's true. You're right. That's right.
I still associate him with the Saints. I don't know.
NorCal Benny G says first 4 or 5 picks should go on the line of scrimmage.
Yeah, I wouldn't hate that.
I mean, you just saw the Chiefs are objectively better than the Niners. They got destroyed by the Eagles because they couldn't block. So yeah, I think that's probably a good place to start blocking.
They'll probably draft the trenches, but it'll be some obscure guy you don't know. You don't like.
Yeah, it's like, well, we did it. You can't be mad, but it's not who you wanted.
Yeah, the Michigan defensive tackle will be there, and I forgot his name, but
they'll take Shamar Stewart instead or something.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm him 707 says we need a DB stud too. Isaac Yadam got picked on all year. Yadam.
The thing is they actually have a lot of needs, and I don't think they're going to be able to address them all this year. That's a problem. So you got to address what you can first, and I don't think they can. I don't think Grant they're going to be able to, maybe, but especially not in the draft. Get a good offensive tackle, get a good defensive tackle, get a good defensive end, get a good safety, get a corner, guard. What are they doing? What are they doing at left guard? The center position. I know people have been talking about this for a while. What about that? Backup quarterback. What are you doing at wide receiver? I don't think they can take I don't think you can trust them to take care of all of these positions, especially just in the draft.
No, they're great at drafting in the first 3 rounds. What are you talking about? I'm him 707 says played with Gross Matos on 2K. Told him he's gone. Doing the Lord's work. That's why you're him. Spider 369 says Jade Barron over Will Johnston.
Okay.
Tony B says the Lance trade broke my faith in the front office.
They Brock Purdy really, really saved them. They would be. This trade would be talked about so much more if Brock Purdy didn't occur. Because who would be their starter right now? Sam Darnold or
Sam Darnold's a great player.
Or still Jimmy? Would they still be?
They would have given Jimmy an extension.
Yeah, he really saved their tail.
Well, Jimmy's going to be the heir apparent to Matthew Stafford in L.A. So joke's on you.
Are the Rams going to listen? If the Giants cave in and give them their first round pick for Stafford, that's going to be crazy.
I can't wait for that. All right, last thing, and then we're out of here. We got some Bet US action. Deebo's next team, if not the 49ers. Money line, we got Commanders plus 300, Adam Peters connection. Chargers plus 400. They need a receiver. Carolina Panthers, he's from Carolina. Denver Broncos, he wants to go to Denver. The Patriots, I don't think anyone wants to go to the Patriots. And the Steelers are always interested in any wide receiver who's available. And there's the Raiders. What do you there's the Rams after that too. What do you think?
Man, I have no idea. I can't, because the problem is who wants him and who's going to want to take on the. If someone trades, what's the contract look like when they take it on?
Well, this isn't necessarily a trade. This is just next team. I wouldn't expect him to get traded. I would expect him to get released with that post June 1 designation.
I'll say
it's like if the dead cap hit is $31 million to trade him, and the dead cap is like hit is like $15 million to cut him after June 1. Is that 5th round pick you're getting in exchange for Deebo Samuel really worth all the extra cap space you lose? I don't know. I mean, you're great at drafting around 5, but is it worth it?
The Miami isn't moving away from any of their wide receivers, right?
Tyreek.
Yeah, maybe. But the other thing is, it seems like
just trade Deebo for Tyreek straight up. Why not?
Yeah, I wouldn't want.
Why not?
I just don't want that. I just don't want Tyreek on my team. I know he's a great player, but I just don't want that. Yeah, I also don't know that Miami would even do that. But now that I'm looking at it from Miami perspective, it looks like McDaniel. Just thinking about it, he's very much gone in like the speed. He looks for speed, and I don't think Deebo necessarily fits that profile. But I just thought about it just because the relationship with Welker's still there, right? And then also the relationship with McDaniel, because I believe he does have a good relationship with him. So that's the one thing that made me think about that. But
they're not even on the board.
No, then that means that's where he's going.
What in the world? How do you not put the Miami Dolphins on there?
Because that's where he's going.
I think that's where he's going. I think we just figured it out. The Bet US is in on it, but I'm going to put down the Commanders just to be basic. I'm mad. $25 on the Commanders.
There you go.
There you go. Confirmed. Check out Bet US, and they got and their live casino as well. If you like, games, live games, they got them with live dealers as well.
And the NBA is back, I think, right? NBA's like there was a game last night. I think I saw.
Oh yeah, that's always fun. You can wager on that.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right, Coach. Well, I think we laid it out for them, and I think they're going to not take our advice. So at least we were on the record of what they should they should do.
Do you think you'll see Kyle at the combine?
Do you think he'll go?
No,
I don't think he will.
No,
I'm going to be there.
You'll be there. First
time,
right?
First time
in Indy, right? In Indy, hanging out, going.
I've been to Cincinnati, been to Minneapolis. But I've never been to
Indianapolis. This is the time of year to go.
I've been to a lot of Appalases, but not Indianapolis. It's gonna be exciting.
This is the time of year to go, right?
Oh yeah. Oh man. A lot of places I could go in February. I could go to French Guiana, but no. Thanks for watching, everyone.